So Mick, you won selection with Caprice of Huon and off to England for the Admirals Cup.
That's right.
And what amazing success Caprice had over there.
Yeah, we had quite a time over there. We had Bill Fesk was our navigator, and in one of the races there was one British boat. They ganged up on us because we'd been doing quite well on round the island races, which weren't Admirals Cup races and that. And this guy bugged us all day, and we were coming up to the finishing line. Bill Fesk had been down below the whole time and working the radio. He's got a beep that picking up signals around England, and he had us fairly well plotted. And Bill put his head up on deck and said to Gordon, we've just come up to the finish. He said he saw this boat underneath us that'd been on top of us all day, and he said, as soon as that boat hits the rocks, go about, you know. So just at that moment, that boat went boom up on the rocks. We went about and over the finishing line.
But of course, Caprice won 3 of the 4 races of the Admirals Cup.
That's right.
Then, and then Australia finished second in the series. So it was again a tremendous achievement first up.
The most interesting race was the Le Havre race. We started off at dusk, and the tides on the Solent there are something terrible. And we'd done a lot of practice with a little tiny anchor and a little cord the size of a pencil, you know. And I was lying on the foredeck, and we were running downwind down the Solent with a spinnaker up, great bow wave and that, and there's forts in the Solent there, and I'd got a beady eye on these forts. And I got on the radio to Gordon, and I said, look, Gordon, we're going backwards. So we anchored the boat, put the anchor down, you know, bow wave up and everything, we were anchored, you know. And then a few minutes later I said to Gordon, we're going ahead again, wound up the little anchor, you know. And then all of a sudden I heard crash, bang, splash, you know, and there was all these big clunkers around us dropping their anchors, you know. So we sailed through half the fleet while we were anchored, and we sailed through the other half the fleet while they were anchored. And we took off, and we went down to Le Havre and never saw another boat. We came round the Le Havre buoy and back to the fort at the finish, and a press helicopter came out actually, and we said, well, where is everyone, you know? And there wasn't another boat in sight, and we won that race just outright. Yeah.
And you mentioned Gordon Ingate, one of the great characters of Australian and international yachting. What was he like to sail with?
I got on very well with Gordon, and I do. I let the water flow under the bridge a few times, you know. But yeah, no, we get on well, and I appreciate his ability, and that's what it was with Gordon sailing the boat and Bill Fesk navigating. We were a great team, and yeah. So I've sailed with Gordon a lot in the America's Cup, in the Admirals Cup, and in Gretel all the time around the harbour and all that sort of thing. So you know, we've had a great time.
Another great character on Caprice, I think Freddie Thomas was with you,
wasn't he? Yeah, Freddie Thomas was with us. Yeah.
Well, great characters, those guys. Yeah. So then, diversifying again, you 68 the Olympic trials for Mexico. You crewed on the 5.5 with Bill Solomons, I think, and Scotty Kaufman. Is that right? And you won selection?
Yeah, we had Carabella to start with, I think, and we took Carabella down to Botany Bay where the trials were on, and this boat was, I guess it's like a greyhound, you know, it's so twitchy. And we'd be sailing on a tack upwind, and all of a sudden the boat would go about. No fault of nobody's, you know, the boat just went about. And we couldn't control the thing, you know. So we decided that a better deal would be to get hold of Barrenjoey. So we brought Barrenjoey down from Broken Bay and put her in the water down there, and old Bill Northam was there, and we sat on the wharf, and they were measuring up Barrenjoey, and the measurer was walking along the wharf, and Bill was up the other end, and the measurer was down aft, and Bill Northam had put a bit of pressure on the bow, and oh, beautiful, you know, she measures all the time, no trouble measuring this boat, you know. then the measure would go forward and Bill would look after you, put his finger on and, oh yeah, see, it's right on the mark, you know, yeah. So anyway, we got this boat measured. We went in the first race and I said to Bill, I said, you get us to the top mark first, and I said, we'll carry you from there on. And we got to the top mast first and we set the spinnaker up, and all of a sudden crash, the spinnaker comes falling down, the block carried away from the top of the mast. Of course, Barrenjoey had been an artefact up at the Alfreds for, I don't know, 10 years, and you know, there was so much that needed doing to it, we just didn't have time. But anyway, during this race we rebuilt the boat on the downwind leg. We set the spinnaker up again on the jib halyard and came down, and I'm not sure where we got in that race, but in the last race of the series, Boothie in his 5.5 was our real bother, and we had to I think be second in the race, and Boothie had to be at least fourth for us to make selection. And at the finish of that last race, we got second, Boothie was fifth, I think, and we won selection to go to Mexico, I think again by 1 point or something like that. It was very close. Very close,
but
yeah.
You didn't go in the crew, I think.
Well, no, then the Olympic Committee got involved in the thing, and they're very particular about getting there weeks before the start of the race and that sort of thing, and climatising to the altitude and all this sort of thing. Not worrying that we were down at sea level, but that was their score. You know, they had to climatise everyone. So at any rate, I had a business conference in America with the company, and I had them change the meeting, the business conference, to fit me in on the Olympic game. But then the Olympic Committee changed the date again, that we had to be there a week earlier, and I said, sorry guys, I can't change the meeting again, so I dipped out, yeah. Right. And Jim Hardy took my place in the boat there. Yeah. But actually we had far better sailing in the trials than they had in Mexico. Yeah. There was just no wind over there at all, you know. So, yeah.
So we move ahead now to the 70s, and I take you to the 1973 Sydney Hobart race, when you were invited to sail aboard Kialoa with Jim Kilroy.
Yeah, yeah.
How did that evolve?
Well, during my time in America on business trips, I'd gone down to Newport several times, and I'd met Jim Kilroy over there and sailed with him once or twice on the Kialoa at that time. And then when he brought Kialoa to Australia, I lined up to sail with him in the Hobart race, which was excellent, you know.
And you won line honours that year?
Yes, we won line honours. I think we came 13th or something overall, or something. Didn't do well overall, but we did get line honours, yes, sure.
And then 2 years later, he was back with a new Kialoa.
That's right.
And then you broke the course record that stood for, I think, almost 20 years.
22 years that record stood, until the New Zealand took it off us, yeah.
So it was a run all the way, wasn't it, that year, I think?
Well, yeah, it was fairly slow to the starting point, actually down to about Twofold Bay or somewhere, I think, and then the howling nor'easter came in and we really took off. And the interesting thing, every year after that I used to come down to the club and see how we were going, you know, and everyone said, oh, they're going to beat Kialoa's time this year. I said, well, you know, just wait and see, you know. And they had a fast start, but then the wind died away towards the finish, and we had it the other way round.
So what was it like sailing with an American team? Because the majority of the crew, I think, were American. I think Magnus Halverson may have sailed, I think, with you.
Yeah, Magnus was with us, yeah.
But majority Americans. What was their philosophy compared to Australian philosophy like?
The Americans are very meticulous on anything, you know. Nothing by the seat of the pants at all by instruments and precision operations. So, I learned a lot with them, I think, you know, and they, was it Bruce
Kendall.
Kendall was the sailing master, and
he was a Kiwi.
He was excellent, and he was very good, and so we learned a lot from him.
Yes.
And they ran a very tight ship, and he was very well respected by Jim Kilroy,
yes.
and everything was first class. So you know, there was nothing you sort of could say this is wrong or that's wrong. You know, it was all.
Yeah, well, Bruce tragically was killed in a. Bruce tragically was killed in a plane crash.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Very sad. No, he's very well respected. Yes, but during this time, or in more recent times, you've been very much connected with the Sydney Maritime Museum.
Yes.
And been a real mover and shaker there. And one of the big projects was the restoration of the bark James Craig.
Yeah.
Which now I think is in Sydney.
Yeah.
But tell us about that, because it was a wreck in Tasmania, wasn't it? When you
yes, it was.
Yeah.
What happened? I joined the museum. I thought I should have a charity of some sort, and this was close to my heart. So I joined the museum, and within a couple of months, they nominated Michael York for president. And I thought, my God, what have I got myself into here? Anyway, within a few months, I was president. This was 1980, I think. And I was president from 80 to 83, and during that time the big move was that James Craig was owned by the museum, and it was down in Hobart, and it had been salvaged off the beach, and it was up in Hobart at the time. And I thought, well, you know, I got to make a go of this sort of thing. So I went down there to Hobart and had a look at it, and we got work going on it to prepare it for the tow up from Hobart to Sydney. And Graham White, who was tug master, ran some tugs for the oil rigs in Bass Strait. And somehow, I don't know whether I talked him into or he'd been involved in the radio relay for the Hobart race. And yeah, that's right. I talked to him into towing James Craig back from Hobart. So I rattled around the big end of town, and I got Ampol to fuel the tug for him and supplied the oil. And he agreed to tow James Craig back as a donation. But what happened then was, when he got to Hobart after the radio relay thing, the unions got onto him about his crew, and the union said, oh, we can't have the crew going for free for this tow with the James Craig. And anyway, there was a big argument set up there, and Graham sorted that out, and we got a free tow back from Hobart to Sydney with James Craig. Yeah.
But there's a mountain of work that had to be done back here to get it into shape, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, that's when it all started, and the thing was that there was no money at the time to do the restoration, and we had a group of governors in the museum. And after I'd done my 3 years term as president of the museum, they nominated me as a governor of the museum. And along the track, I wound these governors up, and I said that we've got to take on this restoration of the James Craig. So I wrote what I call a nuts and bolts paper, which was I don't know, forget what you call them now, an agreement between the governors and the board, and we said that we'd take over the restoration of James Craig, finance it, and rebuild the James Craig and hand it back to the museum in year 2000. And none of the governors knew how we were going to do it or where we were going to get the money or anything, but we started going around the fundraisers around town, and they said, no, it's impossible, nobody will put any money into that old hulk, you know. So the more that the governors were told this sort of situation, the more we dug our teeth in and said, we'll do this job, you know. And it just became a thing that we had to do it. And
you got there in the end.
And we got there in the end, yeah, that's right.
And then in 2001, you received the Order of Australia Medal for your services to the preservation of the Australian maritime history. That must have been a huge thrill and well deserved.
That's right, that's right, yeah, that was a hell of a thing, yeah.
So in more recent times, you've been doing a bit of sailing in the meter boats?
Yeah, I got mixed up with John Stevens in Saskia. He rang me up one day and he said, there's a 8 metre championship on in Scotland, it was a couple of years' time or something. He said, how do I get Saskia to England? In fact, he had rung Robert Albert first and said, how do I do this? And Robert Albert said, you better ring Mick York. So John rang me up and I said, oh, I will see what we can do, you know. What happened was we needed a cradle, a shipping cradle for the ship, so I did a bit of a drawing and a sketch and that, and the museum made up this shipping cradle. In fact, they've made up 4 shipping cradles now, I think. And yeah, so we had the transporter lift the cradle aboard, and then I went down to Melbourne and supervised it going aboard the ship and all that. So yeah, that went off very well.
And you raced on the boat over there?
No, I didn't. John wanted me to be part of the crew, and I said, no, look, I was getting on in age then, and I thought, you know, better I don't do this, but I'll be, what do they call it?
Shore manager.
Well, shore manager or project manager. Project manager, yeah. So actually, before we shipped the boat away, and there was a hell of a lot to do with it. It just didn't go to my satisfaction on the harbour, and it looked terrible. You know, the decks looked like fence palings, and there was no varnish around the coverboard and all that. And I said to John one day, we had a barbecue down at the squadron. I said, this looks like shh.
Yeah.
And John sat back and thought, well, I said, with all the beautiful boats you'll strike in England, this is terrible. So I spent a lot of time on the slip with the boat down at the squadron there and doing it up, and then it didn't sail right. We were breaking vangs, and we couldn't pull the main sheet to windward at all. There was no adjustment and that, so I put all new blocks and tackle on the thing, and I put a cascade system on the vang and the whole thing, and then I made some measurements of where the boom should be pulled to go to windward and all this sort of thing, and actually we got it tuned up fairly well. But then the ship took water like you wouldn't believe. So I had to put an electric bilge pump in it. And the interesting part about the bilge pump, we took it to England, and we were sitting up on the hard there with all these beautiful new 8 metres and that, and all the visitors came round and said, oh, isn't she beautiful? This Saskia's beautiful. You know, they didn't want to look at all of the new boats. This Saskia. And then one day when we were scrubbing the bottom, the guy went right through the bottom with a screwdriver, and there was a hole about 1 inch diameter right underneath the rib. You know? I thought, oh my God, you know. So at any rate, we dried that out with a hairdryer, and we patched it up with epoxy and nailed a copper tingle over it. And we went off and won the World Championship.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. But so Mick, look, just in finishing, I think in 2007 you had the honour of firing the starting gun for the Sydney Hobart race.
That's right.
Which is, I think, a wonderful recognition of your contribution not only to the CYC but to ocean racing and the sport of yachting in Australia. It's been a remarkable record, and it's great to see you looking so well, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, that was great, Phil, firing the gun for the Hobart race, that's for sure, yeah.
Okay, well done. Thanks,
Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah.